Hello, ladies, and welcome to the Just Bible No Fluff podcast. My name is Katie, and here it's all about the unfiltered Bible without any extras. Join me for a focused journey through faith, uncovering the truths that truly matter. In today's episode, we will be uncovering a biblical truth from Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 1 through 8. So grab your Bibles and let's dive in. The text reads, "Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keeper of the house tremble and the strong men are bent and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look through the windows are dimmed, and the doors on the street are shut. When the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of the birds, and all the daughters of song are brought low. They are afraid also of what is high, and terrors are in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl is broken, and the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, and the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. All is vanity." Okay, so now let's zoom out. So Ecclesiastes was written by King David's son, King Solomon. So this is one of the wisdom literature books. This book is often thought to be one of negativity or pessimistic, but it's actually one that shows us how to handle the different seasons in our life. So the main themes in this book, there's vanity, there's searching for the meaning, there's fear of death, and then there's God's purpose in our life. So we're going to see a couple of those themes today as we hop into our text for the day. So in chapter 12, verses 1 through 8, we're going to see three different sections. The first section is verses 1 and 2, and I have that labeled in my Bible as early life. So let's read these. It says, "Remember also your Creator." So this idea of the Creator, that's our whole reason for being, because God made everything we know and He made us. So then it says, "In the days of your youth." So the word days in Hebrew means daylight. It means that you're only given so much time. So you have to take care of what you need to take care of before your life ends. So now we're talking about the days of our youth. So these are the early years. So then the verse continues and says, "Before the evil days." So the evil days, that shows us that we should take care of remembering our Creator in our youth before our life ends, before we have, while we still have the chance. And then verse 1 continues and says, "Before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say." So this idea of saying, in the Hebrew, this word means think, and it means with all your heart, your whole being. So here's what he says. He says, "I have no pleasure in them." So no pleasure in what? The evil, the vanities, because we're going to see this theme of vanities. So this idea of no literally means not existent. It doesn't mean there's some. He's not finding some pleasure in the world. It says he finds no pleasure. So then that leads us to verse 2, where it says, "Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain." So we see this contrast of light and dark again. And doesn't that point back to verse 1 where it says the days? where that word literally means daylight, to show that we have a start of our life, then we have the process of going through our life, and then we have the end of our life, which is darkness. So he's giving this idea of our life is only so long. So that leads us to the end of this section. So we're starting our second section now, and that is in verses 3 through 7. And in my Bible, I have that labeled as the later life. So this is, we've gone through, we're not in our youth. This is what happens to everyone. So we're going to learn about that. So verse 3 starts and says, in the day when the keeper of the house tremble. So in this section of the text that we're in today, Solomon is going to use a lot of imagery to describe things. So here's our first one. It says the keeper of the house. The keeper of the house in our bodies is our bones. So he's saying the keeper of the house tremble. And the strong men, now the strong men here represent our muscles. They are bent. And then here's our next one. It says, and the grinders cease. Grinders, that's our teeth. So it says they cease because they are few. And those who look through the windows, this is our eyes, are dimmed. So we get this idea that our bones are starting to tremble. Our muscles are starting to bend. Our teeth are starting to cease. Our eyes are starting to dim. This is what happens as we go through life. This is just how life is. We start young, and as we get older, things stop working as they should. So that leads us into verse 4. And it says, the door on the street are shut. So if a door on the street is shut, this shows that life is slowing down. The door is shut. You can't go. You can't do it. So then it says, when the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up in the sound of a bird, and the daughters of the song are brought low. So again, these are talking about how life is slowing down, and there's physical aging. We see that. We see the teeth, the bones, the muscles, the eyes. All of it is slowing down. So that leads us into verse 5, where it says, they are afraid. Who is afraid? The people growing older. They're afraid. So physical aging causes fear. So it says in verse 5, it says, they are afraid of what is high. The terrors are in the way. Then it says the almond tree blossoms. So this is another imagery. The almond tree blossoms, meaning our hair will turn gray as we get old. And then the next thing, the grasshopper drags itself along. So this is that our movements will be labored. Why? Well, we just saw, because our bones are trembling, our muscles are bent, our teeth are ceasing, our eyes are getting bad. We see all of this, which shows that our movements are eventually going to be labored. So then it continues and says, and desire fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. When life ends, we all go to an eternal home. And that eternal home all depends on how we live during our daylight. We all have daylight left. If you're listening to this, you still have a chance. You still have more work to do. You could remember your Creator. You can work now. You don't have to fall into the vanities. Our daylight will end. It's a fact of life. We start life, we get older, and then our life ends. That's the idea of the daylight. It's a cycle of life, because darkness will come. So then in verse 6, it says, before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bow is broken, and the pitcher is shattered at the fountain. So all of these things are showing us that our body is broken. Our body will decay as we get older. Things will stop working. Things will stop functioning, because that's how life is. We don't have a new body as we get older. our body is only going to get older and going to work less. And then the last one in this verse is the wheel broken at the cistern. And then in verse 7, it says, and the dust returns to the earth as it was. So everything will end. That's how life is. We start life, there's daylight, and then eventually the sun will set. But here's the thing. Let's read the rest of verse 7. It says, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. Now remember, at the very first verse it says, remember also your Creator. So God created us. And when our life is done, we will return to God. So then our last section is just verse 8. And I have that labeled in my Bible as priorities. So this verse is the continual theme of this whole book. It says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher, all is vanity. So everything besides God is vanity. He's saying that when we go about life and we work really hard to establish a career, eventually that's going to be vanity. If we're working really hard to be good at a certain hobby or know the most of something, eventually it's going to be vanity. It's a paradox. It's saying that you're grasping at something that actually you can't grasp at. He's saying the only thing in life that's not vanity is to remember your Creator and to build a relationship in a life solely founded on Him. That's the only thing in our lives that are not vanity. And so he's saying here, what are your priorities? Is vanity your priority? That literally just means anything that's not related to God. Does that mean it's necessarily bad? No, it doesn't. It's anything you're seeking after that's not God. That could be hobbies. That could be entertainment. That could be sports. That could be self-care. Whatever. It doesn't matter. All of that is vanity. And he's saying vanity is vanity. Anything we put higher above God is vanity. So what is important in our lives? There's no point to it. And he's saying that all of the earth is vanity. But God is not vanity. So that leads us today to our challenge. So I want us to stop and think. For us to stop and pray about our lives. Really think about our lives this week. Do we have vanities? Are there things that we're seeking after and building up in life that are higher priorities than God? Are there things we need to eliminate? Or we could shift their focus to be more about God? Are we building up things that are vanity in our lives? And if we are, this week I want us to think about choosing our priorities in life. Are we building up things that will only fall away when the daylight of our life ends? Or are we investing in things that will reward us when we return to our eternal home? Like we saw in verse 5, the eternal home. Will you work on building your relationship toward your eternal home? Or will you work on building up vanities? So today, are we letting our lives fill up with pointless vanities? Let's cast those aside while we still have daylight in our lives. Let's remember our Creator today. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Just Bible No Fluff podcast. Hit the follow button for new episodes every Monday. Remember, the beauty of the Bible lies in its direct impact on our lives. Stay connected, stay faithful, and keep diving into the unfiltered wisdom of God's Word. Until next time, this is Katie signing off, wishing you a day filled with purpose and faith.